Робочий день.
Good morning. We'll continue briefings about healthcare reform. I invite Oleh Musiy, MP. He's a deputy of the committee in the parliament on healthcare. Konstantyn Nadutyi, he's the member of NGO, Medical and Ihor Naida. He's a member of the Civic Council by the Ministry of Healthcare. Good morning, dear colleagues, dear journalists. We were forced to give this press conference by those intrigues around the reform of healthcare reform and groundless accusations of the main reform of Ukraine, Kutashvili, that the committee or MPs are trying to disrupt the reform. You know that the parliament voted to appoint Mr. Kutashvili, and the vote of trust to him. And the committee on healthcare issues we were waiting for the reforms from the minister for 7 months. But in fact, the first draft law, a little part, which is, it's very difficult to call it a reform, but it's a necessary thing. It came to, we received only last Monday. And here on Wednesday, quickly, the issue was, it was brought to the committee to take a decision. All of us, we witnessed and we know, if you make decision quickly, what you have, especially if MPs don't read it. And you witnessed how the budget was passed when the Prime Minister was just humiliated MPs and people of Ukraine. He showed a little paper and he said, I have this. You see, I have the budget you vote for. And unfortunately, MPs voted for such a budget. And now you witness that there will be law on election law will be approved, and nobody read it, by the way, from MPs. We have only a comparative table, and the law is not published. The draft law is not published, and we don't know for which cat in a sack we voted, and the same approach was used, and it was brought to the parliament, and there was sped out the package of draft laws, which will, as the minister called it. And what does it consist of, that package? It consists of 8 draft laws, and what do they change? Only 10 articles of other legislations, and that is about healthcare facilities, nothing else. Other draft laws, those only 2-3 sentences are replaced, amended, and laws we have. So, someone who is working on the reforms of healthcare, I cannot call it a package of reforms. But nevertheless, you know that according to this law, every MP has a legal right to introduce his vision or alternative draft laws to other laws. And since Monday, last week, all MPs have that right. And when we learned and understood that what they're trying to bring in, with my team, I decided to bring in the alternative draft law. Why? Here's the biggest danger. I would like to explain it to you, and we quickly take decisions, and important decisions that will change the system of healthcare quite seriously. The system of healthcare demands urgently reforms, and nobody is against that. It is in awful state, and everybody understands that, and only long expectation and not clean politicians that run our government, and they use that. And it's very difficult to say whether it's because they don't know Ukrainian legislation, or they don't understand the situation, how Ukrainian legislation is development, or whether they don't understand the situation with legislation in Ukraine and also state of things in healthcare. Unfortunately, for that pathetics of the Prime Minister, that we need to quickly bring in draft laws, we need to run reforms quickly, and we hear about reforms for a year and a half, but there is no reform at all anywhere. In this draft law, unfortunately, and I will quote these things, it is provided not only, it's very difficult to call it privatization of healthcare facilities, just stealing and robbing and privatizing free of charge almost, or for nothing, healthcare facilities. And that's what we get in this draft law, and not only healthcare facilities like hospitals, but also research institutes on land where they are. That's where the biggest danger is, and the biggest lie. And those efforts to speed us up, let's vote, because this is a big reform, and it can bring to the fact like they will steal from Ukrainian people, like they stole everything during the 15 years. Now they will steal everything again, on which they will steal land on which we have healthcare facilities. Let's come down to concrete points. As to healthcare facilities, and what kind of status could they have? In fact, they are state institutions, of course, they are working bad. They don't have liberty. They don't know how to behave with funds, and they are not free in appointing the staff. We have to change that. And so code gives us economic code gives us such a chance. And when we turn in them from non-commercial enterprises, from state enterprises, and that provides that liberty and put that phrase, and we will solve the issue. But in the draft law, we see then an opportunity to switch, to swap healthcare facilities and community utilities to shareholder societies with LTDs, so limited responsibility, and the portable and belongs to territorial community, or 50% of it can belong to the, and also to commercial enterprises. And what does it mean according to the economic code? And as soon as healthcare facility will be swapped to the status, the next day they will be bankrupt, and then they will be sold out. This is this is directly meant in this economic code, and in the transitional articles under part 13, 6.6. It says that when it sounds like this, that when we transfer or we change the form of ownership, and free of charge in the statute fund of shareholder society and LTDs, they provide not only healthcare facilities but also the assets and land on which they are. In this, that's where the biggest danger is, and that's where that corruption scheme, and they will rob our healthcare facilities we have in Ukraine. And I emphasize that not only healthcare facilities, but also research institutes and other enterprises that belong to the state. I will give the floor to my colleague, Konstantyn Nadutyi, who was working on developing the alternative draft law. Thank God that the Parliament has not voted last week for these underwater stones that would allow to steal from Ukrainian people healthcare. But our alternative draft law is different, 15–20% different from the one which was registered by the Cabinet of Ministers and which was brought by Yatsenyuk Kutashvili, and it doesn't provide any gap for them to steal our healthcare assets. Thank you.
Dear colleagues, dear community. Thank you for this possibility to talk to you. And Oleg Stepanovich provided a detailed description of the proposals and some benefits of what we've suggested. I think we've made just the first step, because to make healthcare institutions autonomous, it's just halfway through. In the conditions of restricted access to financing, by giving this autonomy to healthcare institutions, we will either force them to insolvency or push them towards aggressive way of earning their money. And tomorrow it can become a legal right of every healthcare institution. And by working on an alternative draft, we had in mind the idea to eliminate the risk that Oleh Stepanovich mentioned regarding the risk of privatization, commercialization of the healthcare system. And we wanted to pave the way to active healthcare actors. We do know of nice institutions, nice doctors with international experience able to move further the reform. And we were thinking of bringing more economic independence to those institutions that are able to earn their due in market conditions and do it in an open way. We do know that we have Volyn, Rivnenshina, Khersonshina, those remote regions, and if they are made autonomous, tomorrow we may see not a single healthcare institution there. This is the outcome of a modeling carried out by our specialists who analyzed this prospective situation. And we are speaking of a country with a great deal of population, 40-something million, most of them living in remote areas. It will be okay for Kiev. And the developers of the draft suggested by the Ministry of Public Health Protection, they're all living in the capital, and many of them may have never seen those remote areas in Polisia, in Podillia, etc. And we ourselves, with our draft, decided to resolve the two problematic issues and effectively eliminated the threat. The second thing that was suggested on the basis of the budget code, and it is also reflected in the association agreement, it concerns the priority to primary healthcare, because we all agree that prevention is more important than just treatment. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Public Health Protection does not provide budgetary expenditures to cover for expenses of primary health protection establishment. And we introduced the norm to segment healthcare expenditures, distributing them between primary, secondary, and third level of healthcare and medical protection, showing their priority lines and paying attention to areas of most importance for public health. This is just our first step. We continue our work on other draft legislations, and at the time of Oleg Stepanovich at the office of the minister, we started working on regulations to regulate all aspects of healthcare institutions' operations, and we provided it in a comprehensive way, including accreditation, certification, involvement of doctors in oversight, and involvement of the public into this oversight. And we will work even more over self-governance in the medical community. Thank you for your attention.
Please, you still have 10 minutes, so take it into consideration for journalists to have a chance to ask questions. I will touch systemic issues because you heard something concrete very briefly. First of all, anything, even it is anti-aggressive, even when there is reanimation, we need to think what will happen tomorrow, not just to provide the people assistance today, but people just have some opportunities, but for them to understand how it will work. So any quick steps demand understand what will we have in the end of this process. For that, any doctor, any manager, as a manager, I can tell you, should have that vision. What we must have in the end of our steps, our actions. In the beginning process, including such important for the society as healthcare. That is the highest value. Unfortunately, this acting prime minister, and I can tell you 100%, and the majority believe, and that is approved by public opinion polls and the results of the report on National Council of Reforms, how on steps in the healthcare system that the reforms are the worst in that healthcare system. The acting minister, unfortunately, didn't continue the logic of the minister Musiy, who developed the concept of a new system of national system of healthcare. The strategy which we all participated in the development, and the order of the former minister Musiy, it is not implemented into life. So there are sporadic movements. They are like spasms, and the reply is what should be in reality, and everything should move quick, but it happens quick and well and with good quality when there is interaction. Since now on, the Kvitashvili told yesterday, and so the paradigm of thinking is changing, that we are ready to sit with those, to consider those proposals and those amendments to the draft. So interaction between the committee and the cabinet of ministers, Ministry of Healthcare, administration of the president, it is extremely important for us not to have like a lobster, swan, and a pike. And we are ready to become that link in the process to speed up real reforms in the healthcare. Civic Council by the Minister of Healthcare that represented. It's a pity that the head of the Civic Council did not behave like a doctor should, and a leader of an NGO by the Ministry of Healthcare. There is also an issue we have to resolve. Thank you very much, and your questions, please. Interfax Ukraine. I have two short questions. Why your 15% difference? Why shouldn't they include in their draft law? Let me ask saying that, yeah, the one who is developing laws, they know that between the first and the second reading you can introduce amendments. But they are not changing the draft law in its core, but our draft law, which can be called a package, it provides 6 laws, not 8, so 2 laws. Those changes to the economic code and tax code, they're not provided by the alternative draft law. Physically, it's impossible to do it between the first and second reading, and also they reduce changes to the economic code just with one line in difference to 4 or 5 articles. You cannot delete articles between the first and the second vote, and that's why there's a procedure of the alternative draft law, and it's not impossible to bias for those promises, and according to Ukrainian legislation, it's impossible to do it. And the second question: will there be some kind of a special meeting of the committee on healthcare just to consider the alternative and the draft of the Minister of Health, of course? And I demanded that we cannot consider one draft law without having other draft laws. And if we reduce limit the right of MPs to bring alternative draft laws, since we have the alternative draft law, which is on the side of people, not on the side of business or liberalization, because our government is the government of liberals, or it's better to say rascals who steal people's good. So all the deputies in the parliament, they can compare two things and they can make their conscious choice. What they stand for robbing the system or for real reforms in healthcare institutions. And those 80%. Will there be a special meeting of the committee? It's very difficult to say. But I believe that such important draft laws that are there is a small step to reforms. Of course, there should be separate meeting of the committee. I support it. I support the discussion, and we should come to the common opinion. And finally, we should resolve all the issues. And we should put all the dots over the I's. And agency nation. How do you take the statement of Kutashvili that there are 3 Ukrainians who are on the way of? That is Kurchinsk, Musiy, Bohomolets, and. That's the style of not correct style, unfortunately, of the Minister of Healthcare, and his inability to take responsibility. If in the country, for all the country, 3 people are an obstacle to a reform, it's not only funny, it's strange. And it seems like Mr. Kutashvili is involved in political intrigues, but not in real business, because there are 423 deputies. They cannot stop any initiative, any reform. There are in the parliament, and there is a meeting of the parliament, and MPs vote there. In addition to that, Mr. Kutashvili chronically is lying, and that became already known, famous to all. He promised 5 draft laws in January, then 30 in February, then 20 in March, and now we have only just little changes, little amendments to other laws, and absence of any legally approved concept or strategy how to build a new system of healthcare. Though he's speaking about that he has a strategy. Ask him, is there at least one legal document that approves that strategy? Unfortunately not. That's why together with these draft laws that are alternative, I brought conceptual draft law, one of those fundamental stones on which we will build, I hope, the new system of healthcare, about the basics of state policy and healthcare. Read it, and you will see that is the constitution of what will happen in the near decades in Ukrainian healthcare system. One question from Ukraine Crisis Media Center. Explain to us why draft laws were not developed together, you and the team of the ministry. You know, when someone comes to you and you believe that person, and you say, I was imported to be reformed. Wait, I will bring you those draft laws. Okay, probably you trust that. Then in half a year, I will provide, and we had absolutely friendly relations between our committee and the Ministry of Healthcare, and until 3 months ago, we trusted the person who came to do reforms, but it's a complete lie, and that's why this misunderstanding of the Ministry of Healthcare and how to cooperate with the committee and the chronicle effort to lie. To MPs, he's not trusted that he's able to run any reform. I don't believe. You didn't answer my question. Why? Why didn't you work together on the draft law? Because Mr. Kutashvili told that this draft law is developed by my Western partners and Ernst & Young, and for them not And for us not to have any tricks around those draft laws, I will bring them to the parliament quickly. That was his principal position, and during the private meeting he underlined that. But as we have great cooperation between Mr. Kutashlev, Pavlenko, and 4 MPs in the committee, the law on transplantation, which was brought a week ago, together with the minister and with me, and in the committee we developed under my signature and the name of the minister and Pavlenko. The law on transplantation, which seriously changes the system of transplantology and introduces a new paradigm, we developed that together. That was a common language between us, and there was no problem about in cooperation. The minister supports the committee, and MPs support the minister. But here I see evil intentions and how to steal healthcare from healthcare. Maybe that was the task for Mr. Kutashlev to prioritize, like in Georgia. You know what happened in Georgia? Awful situation. 70% of the population in Georgia don't have access to elementary healthcare because everything was privatized there, 100%. So that's the position. I hope that the reform of healthcare will take place. And next time when I visit a hospital, emergency hospital in Kyiv or in some other region, and at the reception there will be the words will not remind.